Hello and welcome to the second episode of the In the Field podcast, brought to you by the second year sports journalism students at the University of South Wales. Today we are joined by David McCarthy. Thank you very much for coming. And we will be discussing employability and the challenges that we can face. So David, how was your morning today?
Good. I mean, long week, Friday, got there. It's been raining for what feels like an eternity, but so far so good.
So first I want to start off with, you told me yesterday that you did 3 years of education in England, and then you went over to America for a year.
I did.
What was that like? Why did you sort of decide to go for that sort of route change?
God, you're going to have to wrap my brain. So I'm going to reveal my age in a second. But yes, this is back in the 90s. Great decade. I think it was like I ended up going through clearing for my course which is kind of ironic for the job that I do now. But I missed out my grades by about one grade and ended up on the flip of a coin going to Leicester and doing a course which was similar to what I intended to do. And there was the option to spend my third year in the US. And I kind of thought that it would be kind of stupid not to take that up.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. Yeah, it was an incredible experience. So completely different experience to doing university in the UK. Massive campus-based focus, massive sports-based focus to the institution. And it was just an experience which I think made me grow and also made my whole university experience as well. So developed as a person and also made lifelong friends from it as well. Sounds a bit cheesy, but it's true.
So obviously you came back to the UK after US for a year. Was there a reason for not staying in the US, or did you just want to come back home?
I had to come back to finish my degree. So I did my degree in Leicester. You just talked about Leicester football a second ago. So I did my degree at University of Leicester, and part of the deal was you come back and do your final year and get your degree in the UK. I think at the time it was like one of those things where I enjoyed my time there, but I probably am a little bit of a home bird.
Yeah.
So I quite like, being surrounded by family or the rest of it. So unless I shipped them all out to the US, it made more sense to come back.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about familiarity as well, and understanding, especially from at that age, when I was probably closer to your guys' age than I am obviously now. That obviously makes sense. That it made sense to come back to something that I knew. So I knew what the job market looked like for the UK compared to the US, and obviously with the US there's the added barrier of visas, all the rest of it, and so on. So I came home.
So with the added visas and stuff like that for the US, was that just a decision that you just wanted to come home, and then at what time did you decide you wanted to go down the career path you do now?
Oh, well, it's funny, isn't it? Because some of these things, again, with the job that I do now within careers, you would think that I would have had it all sorted. It's a job that I do. I advise others how to kind of like make their career successful. I think I was pretty clueless at the time. And I came back from Colorado, spent my last year in Leicester, and then ended up going back home. So I'm originally from Monmouthshire way, so I ended up going back living with my parents. And it was almost like, well, what the hell do I do now, sort of thing. I was the complete opposite to what I'd advise you guys to do, as in prep, sort yourself out. So I got home, and then I kind of thought, well, what do I do? So I ended up getting a job initially it was called Gwent Careers. So I did that for about a year, and it kind of gave me an insight in terms of maybe progressing within that sector. So off the back of that, that's when I ended up doing my postgraduate qualification, which is specific to what I do now. So I did a qualification in careers guidance at Glamorgan, actually, what is now the University of South Wales. I did that back in 2002. And then look at me now.
In terms of like employability, would you say, was it difficult to get that job at Gwent, would you say, or was it quite accessible?
It was a very different world in terms of like looking for opportunity then compared to how it is now. It wasn't really something you go onto the internet to find a job. There was no Indeed, there was no LinkedIn, there were no those kind of platforms. It was all very much kind of like you'd get the Western Mail on a Thursday, look through the jobs pages and see what's out there, or you'd use who you knew. So the same kind of advice, I guess, for a lot of things that you guys do within sports journalism. You think about who's in your network. Yeah. So who do your friends know? Who does, your parents know? And you kind of use those connections to kind of get feelers to see what's available. I can't remember how I actually got the job there, but it was probably through just sending out my CV to the service and, pot luck to an extent. But I think my plan was to work there for a bit and then go traveling again, which I did do.
Yeah.
So I went traveling in 2000, 2001. So I was trying to put off reality for as long as I could, really. So
Are you glad you did that gap year?
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Did you travel or just?
So I did the
sort
kind of
break?
like typical, UK, head to Australia.
Oh yeah.
But I went via Japan. So my friend was out in Japan teaching in Tokyo.
Yeah.
So you could do that if you want. They still do that. Jet scheme, so Japanese English teaching. He was doing that in Tokyo, so I stayed with him for a couple of weeks. Then I went to Australia. I was in Australia for about 9 months or so. Ended up working at a hotel backpack.
Nice.
2Ks, no Cs. Apparently that was cool. I don't know. Worked there for a while, which is great. So, again, the type of job which I always look back on now is probably one of the hardest jobs you end up doing. Those kind of like retail hospitality jobs. You don't think at the time, but those are the kind of pressurized jobs that you take on. And it kind of like develops you, and it makes you think you definitely don't want to do that job anymore.
Yeah.
But it kind of instills a certain skill set in you. So I was in Australia for about 9 months, and then we went to New Zealand for a month, and then we went up to, where did we go? Fiji, Hawaii, and then Vancouver.
Oh wow.
And I ran out of money, so I had to fly home. I was intending to get the train from Vancouver to Chicago and then fly back from Chicago. It didn't happen.
No.
So I had to change my flights to Vancouver. And even that, sorry to keep talking, but
No, it's
even
okay.
that was like these days you go online,
Yeah.
change your flight, pay your price, whatever. I remember I had to go into like an actual travel agent and change this written ticket, and they gave me a brand new written ticket. It was all very old school. You wouldn't understand this. Yeah, that's what it was like.
Just going back a few answers there, you obviously mentioned about how building contacts is important. Just how important is it to build contacts and build networks with other people just to get into possibly a bigger company like the BBC or the ITV?
I think if you can do it, it will help you no end. It isn't always easy. As an aside, my brother is a journalist who works at the BBC on a freelance basis, so there's a contact for you. But I think in regards to just having a network, and I don't like the word network, it sounds a bit clinical or a bit too businessy, but almost like people that you can refer to or get advice from or guidance from or so on. And people know people, right? So the bigger your scope and network, the bigger that you know the kind of company or environment that you want to work within, the more likely is you're going to get your foot in the door within that company. So if I was in your shoes, especially from the creative industries perspective, I'd be I'm sure you guys are doing this, but I'd be going out there, meeting people, introducing yourself to people, sending your CV off, connect with people on LinkedIn or other platforms, whatever it might be, and really build that kind of connections that can help you progress. So I think it's not always easy to do. It's not always comfortable just randomly sending someone an email or going to a networking event and trying to be interested in what they're saying to you. But sometimes you got to do it. And sometimes you got to look at the bigger picture of how it could potentially help you, but also building a relationship with someone in terms of, it could help them in the long run also.
So as a whole, how would you say you sort of went into the job of being a careers consultant, helping especially younger people trying to get the job that they wanted? How come you sort of went for that kind of position?
I think I knew that I wanted to work with people. So I don't mind having a chat.
Yeah.
So I don't mind, chatting away. And that isn't what the job is about necessarily. Yeah. And I like the idea of guiding people and just giving them, I guess, food for thought or specific guidance or understanding or clarity. And I think that was something which really appealed to me. So I first started doing it in schools. So I worked at Cowbridge Comp, Barry Comp, all the comps, St. Richard Gwyn, so about 3, and also one in Swans as well, so Altford as well. So I did that kind of younger age group for a while, and enjoyed it, but kind of found that it was the same kind of conversations. Everyone in Cambridge wants to be a doctor or a lawyer, So it was a bit limited. So getting the job here, and I've been here for quite a while, was, I guess, more of an interesting challenge for me, because it was an age group, obviously university level, where people have got more of a clear idea to an extent of what direction they want to go in. And I felt like I could help them more effectively. So I enjoyed that side of it. I enjoy the helping side of it. That isn't just the job. I do one-to-one appointments. I do a lot of work in the curriculum. It's all sorts of things at the moment with this service that we work with, and we've got different levels to it within Student Enterprise, Careers Plus. We've got our website. We've got different resource platforms and so on. So although the main part of the job is speaking to students and hopefully engaging and helping them, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work as well. So it's got quite a nice variety to it, which I enjoy.
Would you say it's quite like a challenging job to take, especially because you mentioned Cowbridge being like quite similar jobs, but then having been in different places, would you say it's difficult dealing with so many different jobs that people want?
It can be. I think the key thing with my job is to have credibility. So, if I go into, like, I'm not a sports journalist. I don't have a background in sports journalism, but I might be invited to come and speak to you guys about putting together a CV. And you might look at me and think, what's this guy know? What's he know about sports journalism? But I do know about the creative industries, and I do know what's expected of that sector. So I think having credibility and understanding of, what you're advising and guiding on is the key thing. So I think, there are challenges, and I think that's what makes it interesting to an extent. And I think, there's so many different courses here. One day I could be seeing a fashion science student, one day I could be seeing one of you guys, another time I could be seeing a chiropractic student, I've never had whatever. So it's very varied, and I think it keeps you on your toes, and it forces you to kind of like do your research, be understanding, and also I think just understand what students' needs are, and also graduate needs as well.
I just wanted to ask, like, what's one common question you get asked a lot, and what's one uncommon question that students sometimes just don't ask because maybe they're nervous or something like that?
A lot of questions about part-time jobs. So can you get me a part-time job? No, unfortunately. A lot of questions about CVs and general things like portfolios in this faculty, in terms of like, making sure you've got that right kind of brand for the direction you want to go in. And a lot of questions generally about, some students are fully equipped in terms of the direction they want to go in, but a lot of students don't know what direction they want to go in. So there's quite a few students who may have studied like a degree in, animation, for example, but they don't want to go in that direction. So it's almost like they need clarity in terms of what other options exist for them. In regards to, I suppose, questions that maybe students should be asking, it may not be a question per se, but I always think the early bird catches the worm. So the more that you put the prep in earlier, the more likely it is you're going to be ready when you come to graduation. So I think, as I said, it may not be a question, but it's more about advising students to kind of like start prepping and planning sooner in their educational career, as opposed to leaving it until a month before graduation. Probably what I did, but
As you are internal at the USW, what would you say the support that you bring to students being at this uni? What would you say is what kind of support do you bring to them?
I think so we work in, I suppose, across student life, it's now termed. So we work alongside DDS, Dyslexia Service. They may have changed their name now. Student Money. We do have a sector to our service called Careers Plus, which is more of a ongoing mentoring type service. So if there are students in this faculty who are anxious about progressing to, in inverted commas, the real world, or anxious about, how the hell do I find a job, or where do I get experience, or so on, then Careers Plus, which sits under the Careers umbrella, basically offers that ongoing support to almost, I suppose, take away those anxieties to an extent. So I think that kind of additional support is beneficial to a large tranche of students that exist within this faculty. I suppose individually, I would hope the support that I offer is that my emphasis in anything that I do is I just want to help someone, and I don't want to restrict someone. It's not for me to say to someone, you can't do this or you can't do that. I think it's healthy to sometimes challenge students, and I think maybe that challenge is good for some students, and maybe that's a benefit to them in some ways as well.
You mentioned just then people with sort of disabilities and maybe mental health problems. Would you say that's a sort of key characteristic that you need to be a sort of like a careers consultant, be able to not necessarily deal with, but then have to accommodate like every kind of person that needs help?
Yeah, I think you have to be non-judgmental, and you have to, be understanding of different people's needs. Not everybody's the same, and not everybody brings the same kind of questions or issues to the table. So if I treated everyone the same way, then I'd be doing them a disservice. So I think the more that you understand people, I think the more that you understand things that people go through. Everybody has, in inverted commas, their issues. Some people have bigger issues than others, and you have to be aware of that, and you have to also be aware of how that can affect career planning, how that can affect their time at university, how that can affect them getting their assignments in on time, all the rest of it. So I think the more support that's available to different levels of people with different levels of anxiety or mental health issues or so on, the better, because hopefully they get a good service from not just our service but also the wider student life service as well.
I've been struggling with my mental health, and what would one message be like to just say, maybe just like to help us, to help people like myself with getting their work in on time or something like that?
You put me on the spot here now. I will hold my hand up and say that I'm not a mental health advisor,
No,
so you might want to take my advice with a bit of pinch of salt. I think sometimes with these things, it's about, and again, this is my own thoughts, is that things get better. Things generally get better, and often when you're going through a difficult period, it's a moment in time. So it's a moment in time where it feels like the world is caving in on you, and everything feels insurmountable, and so on. But it will pass. Things pass, and things do get better. And again, I know it's easy for someone to say that who may not be in the same position. The response might be, okay, whatever. But I think it's almost like reframing the situation and thinking about, is this something which is, world ending, or is this something that I can deal with, or is this something that I need to get support or help from? So I guess, again, I would want to help. If any student approached me and needed help, I would want to help them. Whether, obviously my focus is careers, but I'd also be able to refer them to services who could deal better with any kind of issues, mental health wise or otherwise, than I could. But yeah, I think it's often about, I think, just, reframing things, taking a step back, having time for yourself. Don't let things overwhelm you. I think sometimes people work in different ways, but I think from my perspective, if I got clarity of what I'm planning for, get myself organized, give myself a structure, I find that can make my head feel less overwhelmed and less kind of as though it's going to explode. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's advice or not, but it might help.
Looking at your entire career, was there at any point where you kind of wanted to step away from the whole careers consultant side and move on to something different?
Do myself out of job now? No, not at all. Not at all. University of South Wales. I love it here. Yeah, always. And I think that's natural. I do enjoy my job. There are aspects of my job which are a struggle and are challenging, but I do generally enjoy my job. However, I think, like with everyone, isn't it? You look back and think, well, would I do things differently? Would I make changes? And in hindsight, possibly. Yeah, possibly. I think, I enjoy things like design, that side of it. I like to think I've got a certain skill set or whatever there. Maybe I don't. But I suppose it's maybe about developing that side of me a bit further. It's more difficult, I think, when you get older as well. Like, I'm knocking on 50. So, that's a bit of a... You suddenly start thinking about pensions and you start thinking about retirement. And then the idea of, changing, your life in a completely different direction feels a bit, less realistic. Although it doesn't have to be, I suppose. But I think when you're paying a mortgage and all the rest of it, life gets in the way sometimes. But in answer to your question, there's always, I suppose, ways to retrain or to diversify. And sometimes you can do that, or I could do that within the job that I'm doing at the moment. So I've just had to work on our website over the summer. I'm not a website designer, but maybe that's the direction I should go in. So, yeah.
Finally, for someone who would want, what would you say for someone who would kind of want to go into that careers consultant kind of job? How would you kind of sum it up to them?
I guess it's for someone I guess I was touching upon before. Everyone has different reasons to go into different types of roles. If you enjoy working with people, it's a great job to go into. There are different types of job, whether it's school-based or HE-based or, working for yourself, what have you. But if you enjoy working with people and you want to help people, it's a really great job to allow you to do that. There are lots of other jobs you could do which entails that skill. You could be a counsellor, you could be, you could work in mental health, whatever it might be. So, but for me, it's almost like a slightly less pressurized version of some of those jobs. So that's why I enjoy it. I think if someone wants to go into it, as with any type of job, I'd recommend speaking to someone or getting experience and finding out what the realities of the job are. You can read about the job. It's not always exactly how it actually is. So the more I suppose you can actually engage with someone doing it or get your foot in the door and speak to them, same as you guys do in sports doing the better, really.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.